Thank you. Take a seat. Good evening, everyone. It's very cold, so if you want to wear your coat, please do so. Now, this evening there'll be two meetings, but it'll all be self-explanatory. So I welcome you all to this first short extraordinary meeting of full council here at Tottenham Green Leisure Centre, which will firstly deal with some required appointments to committees. Once this agenda item is complete, we will move to the second extraordinary meeting to consider the motion before us. This meeting is also being recorded by the council for subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site. And please note that this meeting may be filmed by anybody attending, although the gallery is empty, the meeting using any communication method. Although we ask members of the public recording, filming or reporting on the meeting not to include the public seating areas, members of the public who are attending or watching through the online thing should be aware that we can't guarantee that you will not be filmed or recorded. By entering the meeting room both physically and virtually and using the public seating area, although no one is there, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. As chair of this meeting, I have the discretion to terminate or suspend filming or recording if, in my opinion, continuation of the filming, recording or reporting would disrupt or prejudice the proceedings, infringe the rights of any individual, or may lead to the breach of a legal obligation by the council. Members and attendees will have been provided with the COVID safety guidance of this meeting, and I'll ask that all colleagues abide by them. Before starting the items, please can the Democratic Service Officer confirm with our sound and audio team that there are no issues with the streaming of this meeting and that it is available to the public. Attendees in the meeting can view the papers on the modern.gov app or open the PDF sent through your emails. Now, to support the stream and deter issues with the stream, please can attendees in the room not use the Teams invite, but I don't think you should be. Members watching online, please can you keep your microphones or just your microphones off. Item 2, Chief Executive.
Mr. Mayor, the apologies that have been received I will read out as follows. I'm aware that there are some members here whose apologies we haven't received. Obviously, if those members are not here during the meeting, we will record them as absent later. So apologies have been provided by Councillors Adamu, James, Chirian Kandath, Weston, Apoku, Hearn, Ajay, Amin, Mitchell, Basu, Bull, Demir, Moeed, Stannett, Ejiofor, Hakata and Diakides, and Councillor Mark Blake.
Thank you. Councillor who? Oh, Councillor Rice.
There's a number of other persons who attended apologies. I wonder why they weren't on that list. Mrs. Councillor Ajay, have you got him?
Those were the apologies that we received by email or by phone call.
Have you got it? One?
If you, Chief Whip, do you have any other apologies you'd like to?
Yeah, I've got Councillor Ajay.
Yeah.
I've got Councillor Demir.
Yeah, he was said.
Councillor Stennett, Councillor Ejiofor, Councillor Kagata, Councillor Diakides.
Yes, they were all noted by the Chief Executive.
Councillor Moeed.
Yes, we've got all those.
You got those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, Declarations of Interest. Under the Council's agreed Code of Conduct, members are required to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or prejudicial interest as defined by the Code at any meeting and may not participate in any discussion or vote on the matter and must withdraw from the meeting room. Details of the requirement to make such a declaration of interest are shown on your printed summons at item 5. Should any member need to make any such declaration, you should do so now by clearly stating the reasons and the nature of the interest. Members with a sensitive interest, as defined in the Code, must declare they have a disclosable interest, but the details of that interest need not be disclosed. Are there any members who wish to indicate declaration of interest? Make it rather. No. Okay. Item 4, Chief Whip. Just turn your mic on, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the report and recommendations be agreed.
Are they agreed? Okay. Right. I think that's the end of that meeting, isn't it? Thank you very much. Home time. We will now move to the second extraordinary meeting to consider the motion on the Edmonton incinerator. Please can we note, because I don't want to read them again, the points on filming I noted earlier. I don't think any of you need to listen to me go on longer than necessary. Listed on the summons. And please can we further note the apologies that the Chief Executive provided and the Chief Whip followed up in the first meeting. And on that, we'll move to item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting on the motion on the Edmonton incinerator? Nope. Item 4, Chief Executive.
There were no deputations received in relation to item 5.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, motions. I call on Councillor Emery to move his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. London, though a rich metropolitan city, has areas of severe poverty and deprivation. If you take a look at a map of its most deprived areas, you will see a large concentration in northeast London, on the border between Haringey, Waltham Forest and Enfield. People living in more socio-economically disadvantaged areas already have higher rates of hypertension, diabetes, asthma, cancer and cardiovascular disease. All of these are made worse by air pollution. So where do you think is a good spot for a great big incinerator? Because to me, building one right in the middle of this feels like a disastrous idea. One that will cause long-term harm to those residents. I went to Copenhagen recently and visited the incinerator that was built there in 2017. I noticed some surprising similarities while researching this plant. Before it was confirmed, the group behind the site promised that no waste would be imported from outside the 5 local municipalities. Sounds familiar, right? Just before construction, however, this rule was changed. Now it imports waste from hundreds of miles around to ensure the site is financially viable. This problem will be faced here too in North London. The CEO of the company likely to construct the project has talked about a massive oversizing of the incinerator. The Mayor's office has predicted there to be a 950,000 tonne surplus in its incineration capacity. This doesn't even take into consideration any reductions in waste streams that are forthcoming following agreements made in climate change talks. Our waste should and will reduce, meaning this plant becomes less and less viable. Essentially, this could all be for nothing. It could be a massive waste of money with it either not being needed or banned outright by future climate-aware governments. A lot has been said about this state-of-the-art incinerator, about how it will reduce its nitrous oxide and how it's carbon capture ready. But these are distractions. It won't pre-sort its waste, meaning recycled materials like plastics will be burnt along with the rest. The carbon capture won't come online until at earliest 2035. And the plant will still produce ultrafine particulate matter. These can be extremely damaging to our health and have been found in higher concentrations in the bloodstream of children living near incinerators. Air pollution comes in many different forms, and I'm afraid, despite what has been said by the people behind this project, this site will increase air pollution in the local area. On top of what I've already mentioned, there will be extra vehicle emissions. There will be breaches of the set limit that are undetectable, and there may even be increases in the legal limits. It may well be a cleaner incinerator, but that's not the only option here. The eco park and its recycling facilities all sound great, but why don't we build the incinerator? Sorry. How about we don't build the incinerator in one of the poorest parts of London and just have that instead? Yesterday, I was marching through the streets with the residents of Edmonton, and we've heard from numerous groups and residents who are against the construction of this incinerator. But I thought it would be important to raise the concerns of some other people. I would like to see the balance shift away from incineration. I will continue to oppose new incineration in London, The proposed expansion of the Edmonton incinerator poses a risk to local residents' health and well-being. These are quotes from Labour MP Catherine West, Labour Mayor of London Sadiq Khan, and former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Some of these names, I'm sure, the people sat opposite me will recognise. In fact, the message from the National Labour Party is straightforward. The age of incineration is over. This message, it seems, doesn't stretch to North London. Our future involves a better recycling, a circular economy. Our future involves electricity and heating for our homes generated through wind and heat pumps, not through burning plastics. Our future involves clean air, not our lungs being filled with ultrafine particles. We should be focusing on reaching that future, not building an expensive dinosaur that will ruin it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and 23 seconds to spare. Very good. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm pleased to second this motion. For me, climate change is a social justice issue. We need to make the case repeatedly that this is about fairness. It is the poorest communities that suffer the most from climate change. Councillor Ahmet, those words are from a recent column that you wrote in the Ham and High. The hypocrisy is astounding. 28 waste incinerators are located in the 20% most deprived and ethnically diverse areas of the UK. How dare you talk about social justice while you support something that will devastate our poorest communities? Explain where the so-called social justice is for the residents and something that is both classist and racist. Now, last year I provided a deputation to Councillor Lokes, who took great offence at being challenged, but he said something that was actually quite true. Tammy, with great power comes great responsibility, and you will never have that responsibility. And he's quite right. As an opposition councillor, I have no power over the big decisions, but you all do. And you have the power and the responsibility to say no this evening. Now, Councillor Blake, last time we met, you talked about the things that make you angry. Let me tell you about a few things that I don't like. I don't like anti-Semitism. I don't like illegal wars. I don't like socialists that sell off public buildings like Hornsey Town Hall. Socialists who try and force through mass social cleansing like we saw with the HTV. And I really don't like a Labour council that calls a climate emergency, but at the same time supports a wholly unnecessary process that pumps toxic air into the areas where some of our poorest residents live. Now, at the COP26 summit, we saw Boris Johnson also attempt to talk about the climate emergency, whilst at the same time pumping raw sewage into our rivers and seas. It might pain you all to be compared with the most incompetent and corrupt Prime Minister of our time, but that is exactly what's happening here. Now, for the entirety of my time as a councillor, I have heard not one of you, even those of you who now seem to be vocally opposing this, say a single word against the incinerator. None of you provided a deputation last year as I did. Councillor Ejiofor, during his time as leader, said not one word and yet has suddenly had a change of heart. The simple truth is, if we hadn't brought this motion here, you would have just sailed it right through. It was your misjudgment of the opposition to the HTV from the grassroots campaigners and from us that brought your previous administration to its knees. And I promise you, I will do the same with this. I might not have any power, but I have a really loud voice, and I am not afraid to use it to call out Labour hypocrisy. In fact, I'm hoping that people finally decide to stop voting for you, because you frankly do not care about the people that live here. Finally, as councillors, I've always believed that we should be judged by the actions and decisions that we make here. I've heard so many times Labour councillors tell me about the power of political will. Well, sadly, that seems to be very lacking on this critical issue. If you make the wrong decision this evening, you might as well put your hands over my son's mouth and choke him, because
Palmer,
that's what you condemn him and thousands of others to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I've received an amendment to the motion in the name of the leader, so I call the leader to move her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, let me start by saying, Councillor Palmer, I too have a loud voice, and I won't take any lectures on classism and racism from the opposition benches. So members and any residents watching from home might be wondering why there are fewer Labour councillors present than usual this evening. Last week, I approached the opposition to try to negotiate holding this meeting with as few members as legally possible, as we did last week. This is due to the high numbers of coronavirus and the vulnerable members that we have as part of our group. Instead of taking my sincere request in the way it was intended, I believe there was an accusation about us not caring enough about this issue. And as there is a local election on the horizon, I'm sure this is the line the opposition will be taking in public too. This Labour administration's commitment to ensuring that the Edmonton facility is safe for residents and our environment is already on record. I've now twice written to the North London Waste Authority, firstly to request that they pause and review, and again just this morning to push for greener technology and ambitious recycling initiatives for Haringey. My Labour colleagues on the North London Waste Authority board decided not to vote in favour of awarding the Edmonton contract. Many of my colleagues behind me have been working closely with campaigners on this issue. At a time where public trust in national government has been completely undermined by their own farcical handling of the pandemic and their inability to follow their own rules, residents are looking to us to fill that leadership vacuum. How can we lead by example when the Liberal Democrats are calling for a frivolous meeting to discuss an out-of-date motion? These amendments seek to ensure that this meeting has a purpose, to formally note our commitment to holding the Edmonton facility to the highest environmental standards. We will campaign for the North London Waste Authority to accelerate the carbon capture and storage element of the plans, which will massively reduce the amount of carbon released from the plant. It's no secret that London's current recycling rate is unsustainably low, so we must do everything we can here in Haringey to boost recycling and build a less waste, more circular local economy. We will work with residents, other boroughs and the North London Waste Authority on ambitious recycling initiatives aimed at helping Haringey meet and beat the Mayor of London's 50% recycling rate by 2030. The only way we are going to build this new kind of green economy is if residents are involved from the very beginning. This must include all residents, not just residents who are already very engaged with green issues and with council processes. We have to make recycling work for everyone, including people who are not able to exchange extensively with the council on these issues. The NLWA and the council need to do the work to bring these issues to people who wouldn't ordinarily seek to influence council policy and make it convenient for them to participate. Climate justice is social justice, and true social justice must include everyone. This administration is putting people at the heart of our recycling efforts. We want to create, alongside residents, hyper-local neighbourhood recycling strategies which acknowledge that each area and community in our borough is unique and requires policy that reflects their specific circumstances. We want to co-produce a new joint waste management strategy that promotes a circular economy. We want to protect the immediate community around the Edmonton site and ensure that a greening strategy is in place to improve their quality of life. We will also be running a huge campaign to support businesses to move away from using plastic. One thing has become clear over the last few months. Residents feel they do not have a say in what goes on in the NLWA and are not having their views heard by decision makers. This is why this Labour group is committed to looking at how we can address the challenges in accountability that we face in waste authority arrangements. This amendment sets out how we are going to hold the NLWA's feet to the fire on environmental issues while working with residents to build a greener and fairer Haringey. I hope that all members can support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just making sure I keep a tab on everyone's timings. Councillor Vim, you're seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm very proud to second this amendment, because I'm sure we will all agree that the question of the new incinerator and the opposition to it and the potential alternatives pulls together many very important issues. It involves the future of our planet, and more accurately, the future of the majority of people whose lives and livelihoods are threatened by catastrophic climate change. What's really important here is to have a honest, frank and open conversation with integrity without hurling insults at each other. The opposition raised what they consider to be hypocrisy. Well, let me tell you about hypocrisy. Perhaps the opposition should drop an email to their counterparts in Sutton, ask them a little question about the Beddington incinerator and their support for that. And I'm glad to see you nodding on that, Tammy, because actually this isn't about party politics. I know a lot about what happened with the Beddington incinerator, because many of you will know that I was the Labour candidate for Carshalton and Wallington in 2017, and it was certainly an issue that exercised quite a lot of people. So for people living in an area like Edmonton, at the foot of the incinerator, it involves their concerns about health and the health of their children because of the pollution that will be coming from the plant. It involves the nature of our economy where unnecessary packaging is used that companies make a profit from, and where we fail to invest in up-to-date sorting and recycling facilities that could create high-quality jobs. But this issue is, as I said earlier, also about integrity, meaning what we say and being honest with people. Haringey as a council has declared a climate emergency. We did it at full council and a meeting much like this one. We can't on the one hand declare a climate emergency and on the other hand unquestionably support a project which we all know will pump millions of tonnes of carbon into the atmosphere for decades and decades to come. But we haven't supported it unquestionably, and we have stepped up to the plate on that, especially when it is predicted that London will have a massive overcapacity of incineration. And we can't, on the one hand, accept a London-wide target of 65% recycling, a huge increase from our current just over 30% of recycling, and at the same time, unquestionably support a project which contradicts that target because it needs a continuous supply of unrecycled waste to make it viable. We are promised that carbon capture and storage will, sometime in the future, reduce the emissions. But why isn't this being built in? Why isn't carbon capture being built in to the and storage being built in already as part of the process? Because the technology isn't ready.
Councillor Ibrahim,
Thank
2 minutes
you.
is up, so can you wind up, please?
I will wrap up with saying I think it's really, really important that the opaqueness and the accountability challenges across local government in London is looked at. The democratic vandalism which was imposed on London in 1986 with the abolition of the GLC that brought us these arrangements need to be looked at again.
Thank you,
I
Councillor.
see people shaking their heads. That is at the heart of this issue, that people need
Councillor,
their voices
please,
heard.
take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, let's move to the debate. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleagues before me, I would argue against this monstrous project the Haringey is backing through the North London Waste Authority. A monster that needs to be fed waste to keep its efficiency. A monster that will burn waste rather than sorting it or turning into recycled plastic as an alternative. Even the report published in December by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Air Pollution concludes that the emerging evidence does not support increases in incineration in London and calls to pause and reflect and not to allow excess capacity to drive the burning of recyclable waste. While the letter from the council leader last November to pause and review was going the right direction, Their amendment tonight goes backwards, and perhaps this is why many councillors are not here tonight. With this motion, we ask you to actively lead and lobby NLWA and work with local groups to find alternative solutions rather than discussing on procurement technicalities or drafting yet another recycling plan or waste strategy. To promote our solutions, there is really a state of the art, not something designed on 2015 technology, and something that will benefit North London with a circular economy that will grow jobs and skills. We ask you to look at how other countries and cities in UK like Norwich and Leeds are doing this, as we heard from Dr. Capella last time. We ask you to work with residents and commercial partners to meet our recycling targets for once, and look at what other local authorities are doing so we can increase from our 31.8% to match the recycling rates across London, places like Bexley 54%, Bromley 51%, Croydon 49%, Sutton and Kingston 49%, Ealing 48%, Richmond 44%, Merton 42%. We ask you to increase the number of recycling centres in the borough rather than shutting them down. A council cannot declare a climate emergency, introduce LTNs, and then let an incinerator to be built. If there is something that we've all learned from the COVID lockdowns, is how different it feels when we can breathe air free from pollution. It takes courage to halt a project that is not going anywhere. Please have this courage and listen to your residents, your activists, doctors and engineers. It is time to build back better, not build back bigger. Please be bold and support our motion and amended. Thank you.
The member from Hornsey, Councillor Carlin.
I'm very proud to actually be part of an administration and to be a part of the party in Haringey where we have stood up, where our council leader has written not once but twice to the North London Waste Authority, and where our members on the board actually didn't support this incinerator plan. Because we do have concerns, regardless of the measures being put in place to reduce emissions from the incinerator and the supposed recycling that's going to take place on site. We need to do more. And that's why the commitment that the leader has made is so important, because of all the London authorities, we are the authority that has stood up and said there should have been a pause and review, and as there hasn't been a pause and review, we need to do more to recycle. And that will make a huge difference, because not only is it important that we've taken the step of doing this, we will now be working with the other London authorities to ensure that this happens. And this will be a game changer, because for the first time, there isn't an acceptance of the plan that was put into place quite a long time ago. That in actual fact, we need to be doing more. We need to be doing more with recycling. We need to make sure that anything that goes to be incinerated is really the minimum that is needed. And we're doing that. And I'm proud to be standing here supporting the amendment and supporting the leader. Thank you.
Thank you for that very pithy contribution, Councillor Carlin. The Councillor from Fortress Green, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A report in December by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Air Pollution has called for a moratorium on expanding waste incinerators, citing a significant health hazard to residents and the need to cut carbon emissions. Brent Davis, the Labour MP and chair of that group, said the expansion of the Edmonton incinerator and others should be stopped. Dr. Bill Parrish, head of air quality and industrial emissions at the Department of Environment, has said, when you've got significant point sources of pollution, the further away they are from people, the less people are exposed. Dr. Ed Tranner, Medical Registrar at North Middlesex Hospital, has said, if this goes ahead, you are looking at 35 to 50 years of continued incineration of waste, much of which does not need to be incinerated and is recyclable. Dr. Dominic Hogg, who founded the environmental consultancy Eunomia, has said, plans to increase incineration in London and elsewhere should be put on hold to prevent excess capacity driving the burning of recyclable waste. Jeremy Corbyn MP has said, now is the time to make decisions that our children and grandchildren will look back on and be proud of. Now is the time to make decisions that will take us down a different path, a path that moves away from carbon-intensive ways of our past, like burning all our waste, and towards green solutions. Nikki Gavron, internationally recognised for her environmental expertise, has tweeted, it would be irresponsible to make this decision now. Ian Duncan Smith MP has said, I believe this will be detrimental to the well-being and health of my constituents and will not be good value for money or an astute public health decision. David Lammy MP has written, I share the concerns of Tottenham CLP on this issue and have recently written to the North London Waste Authority to urge them to pause and reconsider their approach on the incinerator at Edmonton Eco Park. Sadiq Khan has said, I have been clear that London does not need any additional incineration capacity. Haringey Labour Climate Action in their special issue last month set out the case for pause and review. They indicated that the growing view is the current outdated proposals are too big, too expensive and too polluting, and at risk of becoming an economic and environmental liability. These calls reflect the growing support for pause and review, including trade unions, CLPs, the London Labour Party Conference, cross-party London Assembly members, and numerous other North London stakeholders. And I'll make one final point. Thomas Sowell, an American economist, has said, it is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting these decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. So it begs the question, why is this council supporting going ahead with this doomed project? Please support the motion unamended.
Councillor Williams from West Green.
Thank you, Chair. How long do I have? Remind me, please.
Up to 3 minutes.
I did,
colleagues had 3 minutes and 11 seconds, so I'm lenient.
Thank you. I did write a few words to speak this evening, colleagues, but having heard from the opposition, I think I will change what I was going to say. Councillor Palmer, I wonder about your constituents in Crouch End, how they feel that you are powerless. You've been elected to represent them, and that's what you're here to do, and that's what we're all here to do. Now, we all know that the 7 authorities in London produce something like 1 billion tonnes of waste. We all know that the incinerator produces carbon, and we all know that carbon is harmful. We also all know that landfill produces carbon and is harmful. We also all know, because we've all researched this matter, I think, and we all take this matter very seriously, that actually recycling rates are down, people don't reduce, and people don't reuse. We have a pandemic that's seen a massive expansion in waste. It's seen a massive expansion in people not cooking, buying things on a delivery app, having people at below minimum wage delivering food to their doors in plastic containers. We've seen a massive increase in waste due to the change in behaviour due to the pandemic. These are real problems that this local authority has to face, and we have to face them together, because this affects, as people have spoken about, all our lives and all our children's lives. Now, if we double the rate of recycling across Haringey, across London, but produce double the amount of waste, then we haven't helped anybody. So we need to reduce our waste, not just this halcyon of increasing recycling. We need to reduce waste, and we all need to do that, and we all need to take responsibility for this, and we all need to remember that no one person sitting in this room can make the decisions on the North London Waste Authority. And both of our members placed by this full council onto that body did not support the recent action. So perhaps next time, take a delegation to the NWA meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. You came in at 2 minutes 14 seconds. Very good. The Councillor for Fortis Green, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you. Can I start by thanking the Chief Executive for everything she's done and wish her the very best in her new role in the NHS. Now, Chair, the number of protests against this proposal, the number of people involved, and the passion of those protests should have given the North West London Authority pause for thought. Wouldn't you have at least expected a Hearts and Minds campaign to win over local support? But no. Team Incinerator have relied on the brute forces of Labour majorities in councils across North London to punch this proposal home, rather than convincing the public it is necessary. Incineration of waste is widely believed to make a more significant negative contribution to local air quality than landfill. When waste is burnt in incineration facilities, it produces hazardous air pollutants, including particulate matter, carbon monoxide, acid gases, nitrogen oxides, cancer-causing dioxins, and poisonous heavy metals like lead and mercury. And it's not just the pollutants produced by the incinerator itself, but the emissions from all the vehicles bringing waste in to feed the beast. For the foreseeable future, these vehicle movements into and out of the incinerator are likely to be powered by diesel and petrol, with all the fumes they produce belched out over local residents too. And Labour's new mega incinerator will demand even more waste to keep it happy. Even more lorry loads trundling through local streets, clogging them, and spraying even more exhaust over local pedestrians. What have the North West London Waste Authority said or done to reassure local residents about any of this? Nothing. Will their new incinerator burn cleanly, more efficiently? Is there anything about this new larger incinerator that will in any way reduce the negative impact compared with the local plant? Are there upsides at all which might reassure local residents? If there are, I haven't heard about them. And the North West London Authority and its Labour masters are too arrogant to bother explaining to themselves to the public. Edmonton is a poor area. Most people are struggling to get by. They are easy people for the powerful to disregard, and they do. To declare an interest here, I was born at the North Middlesex Hospital in Edmonton, and I'll probably die there, but hopefully not from pollution from the burn. In recent years, we have discovered the terrible health burdens of lead in petrol and its permanent damage to the cognitive abilities of the children most exposed, kids living on the main roads in poor, densely populated urban areas. The gas guzzlers of the well-off in the 1960s, 70s and 80s were literally clipping IQ points off the intelligence of the poorest children at that time.
Can I just say to the councillor from Fortis Green, it's 3 minutes and 7 seconds now.
More recently, the coroner's courts have confirmed that air pollution next to the South Circular will be so damaging to children's lungs that it will be literally...
And you're now going to have to take your seat, please.
Thank you.
Thanks. And just to show I didn't cut you off, it was 3 minutes and 22 seconds, so you had 11 more than your colleague in Fortis Green. Councillor Berryman.
There was more.
I'm sure there's always time for more.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm not sure what speech my esteemed colleague, Councillor Williams, had written for tonight, but I kind of wish she stuck to it because she's just taken all my points. She's absolutely right. The way we've lived our life the last couple of years under COVID has changed things, and not for the better when it comes to rubbish and waste, plastics, face masks, etc. The May elections coming up will mark the end of my time on the council, and one thing you learn is that 8 years, 12 years, however long you're on here, does go quite quickly. And I remember being on the environment scrutiny several years ago when we first started to see the recycling rates go down, which was mainly because it turned out that the rubbish we thought we were recycling over in China and other places was generally getting sent there to get burnt, or worse still, landfill, or worse still, just dumped somewhere. With that practice gone, every London borough and across the country, as far as I understand, the recycle rates have dropped significantly. So what are we going to do with the rubbish, as Councillor Williams said? I was on the North London Waste Authority for just under a year, and I can assure people who haven't been on it that the officers and the councillors take it all very seriously. There's not a culture of, oh, what the hell, you know, they take this very seriously, and this has been years in the making. And when time does fly, the problem is the incinerator that they've got is not going to last. And where's the rubbish of 2 million people, as Councillor Williams said, going to go? So I don't think this is an issue that you can just do a pause, because we need to have somewhere for our rubbish to go. Otherwise, we'll end up sending it to third world countries or putting it in landfill here. I think the motion is misplaced. I support the Lib Dems for having the debate because it is a serious issue. I support them for insisting the meetings in person. I think, you know, there's no reason why we shouldn't meet in person. People go to school and teach, people work in supermarkets, etc. But I can't support what they're asking for because I don't think it's the solution. If there's only one good thing that could come out of this meeting, I think the idea that it's being built as at an excess capacity to burn other people's waste is something I would be concerned about. And maybe it's something Haringey councillors down the line would look to put a cap on. That is not what that incinerator will be used for. That could be a positive thing to come from the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. And it was Councillor Bowman's 50th birthday a few weeks ago. So on behalf of all of us, Councillor Bowman, many happy returns to you. Now, the Councillor for Bruce Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The argument for building a new, larger incinerator is based on the large amount of non-recyclable waste we currently produce and the predictions that over the coming decades the amount of non-recyclable waste we produce will remain large enough that an incinerator of the size currently planned is needed with a lifespan of many decades. But this is too passive an approach. Much of what is currently burned could actually be reused, recycled or composted if only it were better sorted. With improved sorting, the amount of waste we incinerate could be significantly reduced. But we currently place too much responsibility on our residents to carry out this sorting. Then we blame them when they don't carry out this technical task properly. Many of our residents have too much to think about, struggling to support themselves and their families while dealing with insecure work, insecure housing and low incomes to spend half their time sorting through their rubbish. It should be our responsibility as the local government to come up with better ways of achieving higher recycling and reuse rates and drastically reducing the amount of non-recyclable waste we have to dispose of. Rather than investing in improved technology for burning our waste, we should be investing in the sorting technologies that are already available and creating good quality, secure, unionised jobs in the process. And we should campaign for legislation, in addition to that already planned, to force manufacturers to replace non-recyclable packaging with alternatives that can be reused, recycled or composted. This way, we can reduce the proportion of non-recyclable waste we produce to zero or close to zero. I admit this is a huge task and a big change, but it's one that's necessary and urgent if we're going to address the climate emergency we face. Building a new, larger incinerator with a lifespan of 50 to 70 years is betting on our failure to do what's necessary to combat climate change. Let's act to address the climate emergency, not bet on us failing to do so. And to be clear, it's the capitalist economic system that's at the root cause of the drastic climate emergency we find ourselves in. Our current system relies on us consuming an ever-increasing amount of resources, producing disposable products which we use once or twice, then throw away. It's this system that exploits the working class here and globally whilst destroying the planet, and it's this system that needs to change if we're ever going to defeat climate change. Councillor Ibrahim mentioned the need to look again at the way waste is managed in London and the glaring gap in democratic oversight of the North London Waste Authority. It's clearly a problem that the North London Waste Authority makes a profit by burning waste, and then by selling the energy produced to the electricity grid. There's an obvious disconnect between London Energy's interest in making a profit and our need as political representatives to make strategic decisions that address the climate emergency. So I wholeheartedly support the call in the proposed amendment to begin a conversation on addressing the democratic accountability deficit we have in the current waste authority arrangements in London. And that's why I'm fully supporting the amendment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members on this side who want to speak? Because I gave an extra one over here. No? Okay. I call on Councillor Envy to respond to the debate.
Thank you, Chair. It would have been good if we'd known about that extra speaker before, but I'll move on. Councillor Palmer, let's start with, I think it was a very passionate speech.
Sorry, Scott, what do you mean by that? What's the problem?
The problem being that the Labour side had an extra speaker and we didn't.
Well, I offered your side the opportunity to speak.
Generally, if you need to make a speech, you need a little bit more preparation.
No, well, I gave ample opportunity for different colleagues, and Councillor Bowman indicated when he arrived, so.
I'll continue with my speech. Councillor Palmer, as I said, a passionate speech, impossible to ignore. She mentions the lack of power, but it's not true. Tonight, she, along with all of you, have the power to make a difference. You can stand up and let your vote be counted and continue this campaign. Councillor Ahmed, this is an important vote. The first that many of these councillors here have ever had on this incinerator. If you didn't want this meeting to take place, you shouldn't have filibustered the last meeting we had last year. When you talk about your reps and how they voted on the incinerator, you fail to mention the fact that they spoke in favour of the incinerator but against the specific vote. I think that shows that in future they will be supporting the incinerator, as it seems all of you are. She also mentions the second letter that was sent to the NLWA. That letter was sent today at 18:45, something obviously we're not going to be very much aware of. Councillor Ibrahim. I'm amazed Councillor Ibrahim mentions the situation in Sutton, of course, because I believe she was quoted as saying that she was against the incinerator in Sutton. So slightly confused by why she's now voting in favour of this one, but we'll move on. Councillor Rossetti. She adds to the list of people who have been mentioned today in terms of people who are against the incinerator. There's the many groups that have come up and said that this incinerator cannot go forward and must be stopped. Councillor Carlin, I'm confused to how you can be proud of a council that continues to pollute its people. And if you want to support a pause and review, then the way to do that is not to support the amendment that you are currently supporting. Councillor Ross. He raises an important point about the impact of being so close to an incinerator, one of the things that I think is vital in this situation. This incinerator is not in Haringey, but it's not very far away. It is less than a mile from Northumberland Park. That plume will cut across Tottenham. Councillor Williams, people are recycling less in Haringey, but that is Haringey's failure. Across the country, recycling rates are increasing. And you're right, we could have taken a deputation to the NLWA, and we did. Articles were then written about the rudeness of Councillor Lokes and his awful behaviour towards Councillor Palmer. Councillor Hinchcliffe again adds to that list of people, mentioning several people across the board, including doctors and others. Councillor Berriman, thank you for raising the issue of where our waste is going. The incineration capacity that he mentions, however, is going to be large enough without the incinerator that we are currently being built. I do thank him for his point on waste from other boroughs, and I hope this is seriously looked into and is considered in future to make sure it doesn't happen. Councillor White, this site doesn't have an MRF, a mixed recycling facility, and is one of the reasons we are against it. Please consider your vote supporting this amendment. I thank everybody for their commitment to this meeting, and I thank you for it going ahead. But please do consider that if you want to stop this incinerator and if you want to have a pause and review, you need to vote not for your amendment, but against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well in time. And I will just say, in terms of speakers, there were 15 opposition speakers, councillors elected the last election, and 42 Labour. So having one extra speaker wouldn't be disproportionate in relation to the numbers of people here. We'll now move to the vote on the amendment proposed by the leader and Councillor Ibrahim. If it's agreed, we'll then vote on the motion as amended, and if it's not, we'll vote on the original motion. So all those in favour of the amendment tabled by the leader, please raise your hands. What are you asking for? The amendment is what was proposed by the leader. What are you asking for? Yeah. (20 in favour, 15 against, and 1 abstention).
Mr. Mayor, can I propose a motion from the floor, please?
Yes, what? Or do you mean an amendment?
Yes, apologies.
Wouldn't have time for a new motion.
Yeah, of course not. Thank you. After seeing the Labour amendment, our group believes there is a lot of good in it. We welcome any efforts made to improve recycling rates. We welcome a joint waste strategy from the NLWA. We welcome further air quality monitoring. But we must have a fixed position on a pause and review of this incinerator. What was the point of Councillor Amit's letter last month if she now doesn't back a pause and review in this motion? The Council's position is muddled and we need clarity. Our amendment, which you can see in the printed copies provided, is to allow for all the additions, but also to formally request the Council takes the position to pause and review the situation before going ahead with this incinerator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can second that amendment, please. And I know I have a minute to respond. So Councillor Ibrahim talks about openness, transparency and the need to engage. I welcome that. But I would say I've lived here for a long time. I live in White Hart Lane, actually right close to the border. Not once have you ever asked me for my opinion on the incinerator. Not once have you told me how much it's going to cost or asked me what I think about it. And in fact, as recently as 2 or 3 months ago, you were completely silent on this issue. And actions speak louder than words. So if you want to show residents that you mean what you say, you must support our amendment to the motion this evening. Thank you.
That needs to be circulated to colleagues. Have we got copies for members? As if you knew it was going to happen. Very good. The Blue Peter amendment. Here's one I made earlier. We'll just take a moment for that to be circulated and for colleagues to read the amendment. Just noting it's warmed up in here. Yes, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Would I be allowed to ask a very quick question of the leader?
No, there's no. You can ask me a question if you like.
What do you think Jeremy Corbyn would want this council to do this evening?
No. You have a call from the last meeting when you were naughty and I told you off that we don't accept that, so we'll have no more of that, thanks. But you're lucky that there wasn't the debate, otherwise I'd have given some time to somebody else. Right, everyone's had a chance to read it? Okay, so let's now call on the monitoring officer.
Mr. Mayor,
So Chief Whip.
could you just tell us how we're going to proceed from here on with this amendment?
Well, the monitoring officer will say whether it's in order or not, and whether it's been accepted. Then we'll move to a vote on that amendment, which will have, been done for many of the years you've been here, Reg. Yes? Well, the monitoring officer will confirm it's in order. We'll then go to vote on that amendment. When that, depending on the outcome of the vote on this amendment, we'll then proceed to vote on the motion as amended by the amendment that your group proposed. Monitoring officer.
Mr. Mayor, I confirm that it's in order.
Now, I wanted to be clear on next steps. We'll first vote on the new amendment as I indicated from the opposition, and if this further amendment is not agreed, we will then proceed to vote on the first amended motion as explained. This is, and the amended motion is set out in your papers in the supplementary packs. If the further amendment is agreed, we will vote on the substantive motion, including the second amendment as set out in the paper that's just been provided to you. So,
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I just request
sorry, can you just stand up, please?
Do you mind if I just request a named vote on this one, please? Thank you.
You can't do that on your own. There we are. I told you that. Look at me, Scott. It's your. I need 8 votes of you. It's not for me to provide it. Okay. A named vote has been requested, and 8 members have risen to secure it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not at all clear.
Pardon?
What is it that they're going to have a name vote on?
On the amendment, Chief Whip, that's just been handed out.
But it hasn't been discussed yet.
Well, I don't think we don't debate the amendment. It's just been put by the opposition, and we go straight to the vote.
Well, why don't we consider what's there?
As you'll recall from the pre-meeting, Chief Whip, that this is the procedure that was set out and agreed by both parties ahead of the meeting, that there'll be no vote on.
There's a motion before the meeting there's a motion, then there's a motion to amend that. Right.
This isn't a motion, this is an amendment.
But yes, there's an amendment to the motion. But
Yes.
There was also a first amendment which we voted down. So this is a second amendment to the same motion. Is that
Yes.
what it is?
No, this is an amendment to the amended motion, because that's been agreed by the council.
So we haven't voted on it yet.
Sorry, this is a second. Sorry. Yes, you're quite right. Sorry, yes, I'm getting confused now.
Okay.
Mainly because you're confusing us already. The first amendment that the Labour Party have proposed was supported. Another amendment has been put by the opposition, and we're now voting on that. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm totally confused. What is the amendment to the amendment? I mean, to the motion. All I can see is they just changed the names at the beginning. So where exactly are they amending it? I'm really confused.
I have to say, the 2 former mayors are asking these questions is of note. The amendment that's just been put circulated by the opposition's political assistant is the amendment. I gave colleagues the opportunity to read it, and if you read it, you'll have seen that it is different.
Mr. Mayor, if you want, I can completely non-politically read through what we changed, if that would help.
Well, maybe that would be helpful. But before I come to you, hold on. Councillor Davis, you had a hand.
Yes, I'm probably not a very quick reader. What's going on here is that we have been presented with the original motion amended by the amendment passed this evening, and then you have deleted parts of that and added bits in a further amendment. I don't know where that stands in relation to us having just passed it, whether there are whether there are rules that mean that we can't now go back to something that we have just voted on and take large parts of it out because we have just agreed it. The other thing that I've got an objection to is that this is basically a pair of, something the length of an A-level essay. We don't know for sure that you haven't added, that there aren't words in here that have been added afterwards, that be an and or a not, or
Just speak through the chair, Councillor Davis. Sorry, we'll deal with this. We've had a good meeting, so everyone is entitled to have their say, and we'll get through it.
So
Councillor Davis.
I can't feel confident that what we've had tabled and haven't got the time to read thoroughly is our amended motion. And I would like a ruling from the monitoring officer as to whether it's within our standing orders to agree a motion and then immediately take bits of it out again.
We haven't agreed the motion. We've just agreed the amendment that your party proposed. And the simple answer is vote it down if you disagree with the amendment that's been proposed by the opposition. Colleagues were given the time to read it. I mean, you know, this is the Constitution allows for amendments to be proposed from the floor. Obviously, we're not able to take 4 hours out of meetings to consider them. And some colleagues will recall this is exactly what happened during the extraordinary full council on Brexit in 2018. Councillor Ibrahim, I am just conscious that we are now spending almost more time on process than we were on the issues at hand. But Councillor Ibrahim.
Yeah, but I think it's an important point that's been raised is I'd like advice from the monitoring officer about whether, as Councillor Davis points out, where there are parts that have just been agreed and voted on, whether they can then be immediately voted on again to have them removed. So it could be that there has been an addition that's different, but if there are things that were in the amendment that are now removed, if we voted on them, can we then just have an amendment that immediately removes them? I'm not clear, and I don't really think I've got enough clarity on that.
Okay, give me 1 second. Is this on the same matter, Chief Whip? Yeah, press it once. There you go.
I find it really disappointing that yet again the administration will stop at anything to stifle debate.
Councillor, excuse me.
Mr. Mayor,
no, excuse me. You don't tell the chair not to speak, Councillor O'Neill. I've given all colleagues the opportunity to speak. This is now not a debate about what people are doing. I wanted to solely focus on people's procedural concerns. We'll now go to the monitoring officer to address the point. But it's not about colleagues trying to do X, Y, and Z.
I was going to come to that.
Well, please do that now.
So number one, we haven't agreed a motion. It is our amendment to your amendment as in accordance to the standing order. The amendments that we have been made very clear in the paper and in very different pages in track changes, which you've been given 5 minutes to read. Is it suddenly now the administration no longer have to read an amendment?
Let's just maintain a little decorum, and as the person who's responsible for discipline on the opposition benches, I hope you'd lead by example. Monitoring officer, would you like to respond? I don't want any more points on this. Please. No, sorry. Monitoring officer.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I haven't got an amended version.
Councillor Peacock, you know more than most that you don't interrupt the mayor. If you're making a point,
I haven't got an amended version.
Please don't shout. If you're making a point of order, then you can do so, or you can quietly and respectfully engage with the member staff who can assist you. But please don't shout out across the meeting. Monitoring officer.
So, Mr. Mayor, the next steps are we will first vote on this new tabled amendment. If this further amendment is not agreed, we will proceed to a vote on the first amended motion as a substantive motion. So I agree with the steps that the Mayor's outlined.
Now, let's... Chief Whip.
Look, the monitoring officer have not answered the question put her by Councillor Davis. So could she please now answer that question?
No.
There's a specific question here, monitoring officer, about whether colleagues can vote on an amendment which may have removed something of amendment passed before. So can you address the specific point so we can move to the vote?
So, Mr. Mayor, 15.8E. If an amendment is carried, the motion as amended takes place the original motion. This becomes a substantive motion to which any further amendments are moved. Yeah.
Does that address your concerns? Super, thank you.
Well, it doesn't to this extent. In as much what's being said is that it cannot be amended in this form.
So what are you proposing, Chief Whip?
I'm not proposing anything. I'm proposing that this is not put to the vote because it's out of order.
I'm proposing you read the standing orders.
Okay, colleagues, let's maintain some manners. Monitoring officer. Patience is a virtue, Councillor. We'll have some more of it, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, we've not voted on the substantive motion as yet. So there's been a further amendment moved from the floor, and depending on how that is dealt with, then we will know what the substantive motion is.
Leader.
I've been utterly confused throughout this meeting. It's like we're having two separate meetings. First of all, your original motion is out of date.
Sorry, Leader.
No. I think this is really clear
please.
because they're asking for a pause of it. That decision was taken in December. Okay, so you are asking for something that is not possible within the.
That is because.
Excuse me.
It doesn't matter. You are asking for an out of date.
Be quiet, please. Crikey, I said the Chief Executive earlier on, I've never used this, and you've given me ample opportunity. At least I've got it in before the end of my term. Please. Not, if you have a question, I'll accept it. But we're not going to continue the debate. You've warmed me up now, and I was freezing, so that was rather helpful, actually. But we won't have any more of that bad behaviour. Can we now please go to the vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor, I can't remember, wasn't it? Councillor Emery. And it's a named vote. So, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, if you could indicate when I call your name whether or not you are voting for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstaining. Councillor Ahmet.
Against.
Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor Berryman.
Against.
Councillor Bevan.
We're voting. Councillor Bevan, how are you voting? Excuse me. This isn't about having separate meetings. We're conducting a vote here. Councillor Bevan, how are you voting?
I'm in for the amendment.
Councillor Blake. Councillor Barbara Blake.
Against.
Against, sorry, my apologies. It's very difficult to hear right at the back here.
So that's Councillor Bevan. Just for clarity, could you repeat that, please? Councillor Bevan, just for clarity, could you just repeat which way you're voting, please?
On the opposition amendment.
Chair. My apologies, it's very difficult to hear at the back here. It's very echoey. I was against.
Sorry, just take a seat, Chief Executive. Councillor Williams.
Chair, I know I shouldn't interrupt in the middle of a vote, but it's extremely disrespectful when I see people in the opposition laughing at somebody because they can't hear something being said. And I'd please like an apology.
I didn't see who that was. Who was that? Who laughed? Because if someone did laugh, and hold a second, Julia. I see you enjoying the idea of being mayor, but we're not quite there yet. Councillor Barnes?
Adam, it was probably me. I was not laughing at anybody who couldn't hear. I was laughing at the confusion that has been going on for the last several minutes.
Right, that's an apology of sorts. Chief Executive. I've been called many things in my time, Reg. Adam's perfectly all right.
Councillor Barbara Blake.
Against.
Councillor Brabazon.
Against.
Councillor Carlin.
Against.
Councillor Corley-Harrison.
For.
Councillor Chanot.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Culverwell. Councillor Da Costa.
For.
Councillor Dasneves.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dennison.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Dogan.
Against.
Councillor Emery.
For.
Councillor Gordon.
Against.
Councillor Gunesh.
Against.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Hinchcliffe.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Against.
Councillor Mitchell.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Ogiahor.
For.
Councillor Palmer.
For.
Councillor Peacock. Councillor Rice.
Against.
Councillor Ross. Councillor Rossetti. Councillor Say.
Against.
Councillor Tucker. Councillor White.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
Against.
Councillor Jogi.
Against. Thank you. Yeah. So 20 against the amendment, 15 for, and 1 abstention. So that second amendment has fallen. As such, we'll now vote on the substantive motion as amended by the first amendment, tabled by the leader and seconded by Councillor Ibrahim. All those in favour? I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm counting myself. All those against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Okay. There are 20 for the amended motion, 15 against, and 1 abstention. So the motion as amended is agreed to. That brings us to the end of this evening's business. Thank you, colleagues, for 75% of the meeting being good and respectful. But you did give me the opportunity to use my gavel. I'd like to just say 2 quick things, please. The first one is congratulations to Councillor Hakata and Councillor Peacock, who were shortlisted for the LGIU Councillor of the Year Awards. Councillor Peacock won Lifetime, and what a lifetime it's been. Achievement Award, Councillor Hakata, as it happens, I was shortlisted too, but there we are. Yes, so well done to Councillor Peacock. And on Thursday, the 27th of January, you'll all know it's Holocaust Memorial Day, and I'll be raising the flag this year as I did last year. Although last year I was on my own because of the COVID restrictions, this year at least there can be other human beings, and we'll be at George Mead House at 10 o'clock. So I hope all colleagues will join us for that important occasion. And with that, good night.